all over the shop today, ain't I? Oh dear, that's before we start. Hello lovelies, and welcome to the April 2021 episode of the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast. My name's Leslie. This is a podcast about knitting, crochet, spinning, sometimes weaving, machine knitting, anything you can put yarn to I'll have a go at basically, and it's recorded in the south coast of England. I record throughout the month, kind of vlog style, and then put it all together and post on the last weekend of each month. I also do a weekly vlog. That's more kind of life stuff, touching on the craft stuff, but it's more the kind of everyday pottering here and there type of stuff. And I use the word stuff a lot, I don't know if you've noticed. Whether you're a new or a returning viewer, thank you so much for being here. You are very welcome, and I'm very grateful for you for spending your time here. If you are new, you may wonder why it's called Not Quite Enough Yarn, when I have a couple of cupboards, another one over there, boxes and bags of the stuff. I rarely have enough for a complete project, especially a garment. So that's how it got its name. And what I'm wearing is a case in point. This is my version of Floof by Reindeer? Sorry, Ellie. By Skeyndeer. Floof is a sweater pattern, and the original design was to be knitted holding two strands together, a fingering or 4-ply weight and a mohair. I haven't done that, as you can very clearly see. I wanted to make a cardigan, so what I did is I had some of these yarns, I did a swatch, and then worked out what pattern was closest, had the same gauge, so that I could then use that for the overall shaping. So that's what I did with this one. Anytime I'm wearing a hand knit item, the details will be linked below, so you can see what the pattern is, what yarns I've used, and that kind of thing. So that's those bits of admin, I think. The other big bit of admin is the year-long make-along, which I am running with the wonderful Kellyanne of the Yarn Tales by the Sea podcast. Again, she's linked below. And it's an accessory mal. So any accessory for the person, scarves, hats, socks, cowls, belts, gloves, you're kind of getting the gist. Basically anything that's not for the home or a garment, I think probably covers a lot of it. Yeah, so any accessory that can be worn is eligible for the mal. To enter, both Kellyanne and I have groups on Ravelry, and so to be eligible for entry, please join the groups. And we both have two threads. One is a finished object thread, so post the pictures of the item you finished. By all means put a few notes, the yarn you use, the name of the pattern, if it's a gift, who it's for, something like that. But that's a no chatter thread. But by all means post the same picture or works in progress or whatever you're doing on the chatter thread, and that gives people a chance to respond, perhaps to ask questions or to tell you how fabulous everything is. I am aware that not everyone gets on well with Ravelry because of the accessibility problems. I know that some of the changes made, including the dark mode, have helped some, which is great, but not everyone can use the site, and obviously we don't want to be making anyone ill, nor do we want to exclude anyone. So if you are unable to use Ravelry because of the accessibility, please email me, and I'll put the email address on screen, but it's notquiteenoughyarn@gmail.com, and I will add your post to the thread. So I hope that is okay. Prizes are drawn quarterly. For the finished object thread, there's a physical prize, so a bag or some yarn or something. On the chatter thread, the prize is a pattern that can be got to you online, because we're international and it's posting stuff out isn't practical with patterns. So something that can be got to you electronically up to a value of $10 US. Drew the first quarter's prize last month. Thank you to both winners for responding very quickly, and I hope you are in receipt of your prizes and happy with them. So the next prize draw will be at the end of June. Gosh. So yes, April. This is this podcast is partly about my attempt to reduce the quantity of my stash. I have no judgment about anyone's stash size. If you have no stash at all because that's the way you like to work, or if you have enough to fill a football stadium, that is your choice. But for me, I am getting a little overwhelmed. I have, like I say, the 3 cupboards, I have boxes and crates and I don't know what else. And for me personally, it's too much. So I would like to get my stash down to 2 cupboards worth, and then this cupboard behind me here, I intend to use to store my hand knits once there's space. That's the plan. As you will see during this podcast, the best laid plans of mice and men and all that, because yarn falls upon me. And this is me not complaining. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, some yarn came my way because we were able to kind of meet up with people. Actually got to spend a bit of time with my family for the first time in quite a while, face to face. I mean, we've done Zoom, we've done lots of phone calls, but first time I've actually physically been in the same place as some members of my family. Which meant some yarn came my way, which I will talk about later. And we also exchanged Christmas gifts. For any young children, we posted them so that they had them in time for Christmas. So obviously we posted them to the North Pole so that Santa could deliver them. But for the adults, we decided Santa could wait. So we've now exchanged Christmas gifts. And I'm going to show one of them to you because it is yarn related. And it is this book. So that's Designer Crochet by Shannon Mullett-Bowlesby. And it's rather lovely. Sizes up to 5X. I do like my patterns to be size inclusive. And there are some rather nice pieces. So we've got this, calls it a poncho top, very kind of boxy shaped sweater there. There is, now I have a question. Do we think that the person modelling this is actually that tall and that long in the trunk? She may well be, but that looks to me like that's been stretched out a little. If that is the model's natural shape, then the garment fits beautifully. But judging on that photograph, it doesn't matter how big the sizes go, that's not one I'm going to be making for myself. And I'm quite long in the trunk. I have short legs and a long trunk, but I'm still never going to look as much like a Mondigliani as that. So I also have, I think it's I mean, it's a great book. It's a little bit overstyled for me because we have here a two-way top, because this can be worn with the rib at the neck or upside down, so the deeper rib is at the neck. But it would be quite nice to see a photograph of that, because you could look at that and think, oh, that's not really for me, but the other way up you could think, that is the sweater I want. So just a couple of kind of daft things, but some nice patterns and a few different techniques. We've got some Tunisian crochet, we've got some front post stitches, we've got some lace work. So yeah, that was a Christmas gift, and I will let you see, I really like that. That's a very nice sweater. So yes, I will probably be making something from here, but I don't know when, and I don't know what yarn I'll be using. Yep. so I think that's it for the moment. I'll catch up with you throughout the month. Hello lovelies, I've got a small FO to show you, which will be modelled by Bride of Chucky, so brace yourselves. Little sun hat for my great niece. I started off making the baby cotton hat by Mimi Alelis. Put all the details in the, I'll put all the links down below. I didn't have the right size hook to hand. It calls for a 2mm, I had a 2.5, and also I was using different yarn because the pattern calls for a number 8 crochet thread, and this is some Sklepses or sheeps's yarn, wool that I had left over from an earlier project. So I started off using that pattern, excuse me, and then I varied it slightly. Because I had the slightly larger hook, I didn't need to make as many increases before I started for the crown. She said, hoping this will fit the child. I hope so. But it's a very handy little pattern. It's a free pattern on Ravelry, and there are 2 sizes available, so I'll put the links in down below. Yeah, so sweet little hat. It looks an odd shape. That's because Bride of Chucky is an odd shape at the back. She has a very flat head at the back. The hat itself is round. So yes, I followed their pattern. I decided to put these sort of lacier bands in. I just thought that might be nice because we really want this as a sun hat to keep the sun off rather than making baby's head too hot. There's then a little couple of rows here showing the mark between the main hat and the brim, and because I was working with different stitch numbers, I did a slightly different configuration of the increases and finished it off with a crab stitch edging. So like I did with my cowl last month, just gives a nice little picot edge. There is a flower on the pattern. By the time I was doing this bit, I didn't have the pattern to hand, so I just made up a little flower. And the beauty of the whirl is that you're dealing with one colour and the other end of the ball is the other colour, so it's still whirl, but it just was from the inside rather than from the outside. The outside of what I had left, this was actually the Blueberry Bam Bam colourway. So it goes from dark blue into light blues into greys, then into sort of cream, white, undyed sort of colour. Used... This is why I'm never left in charge of children, because Bride of Chucky is now on the floor. I used 34 grams of the yarn. Sorry. I used 34 grams of the yarn, and yeah, nice little hat which I hope will fit and be useful. Cheers. Hello lovelies, my middle sister, who doesn't knit, was helping a friend sort out the estate of a family member. They were kind of clearing the house. And there was an awful lot of yarn there. And it was going to get thrown away. So my sister said, I have 2 sisters who knit. So when we were last able to meet, I think it was kind of just before autumn last year, middle sister brought the yarn up to big sister, and I had said please let her have first go at whatever she would like. And this is what I have picked up today from meeting my dad and doing some swaps of Christmas presents and all sorts. So my goodness, awful lot of complete balls here. Wow. Lots of stuff suitable for baby knitting, which is handy because baby knitting is always a nice thing to do. But a lot of other double knitting. A lot of it is got Stylecraft Special there. Got the Hayfield double knitting with wool. Got a few colours of those. So lots of scope. And fun things. And of course some fun fur, because that's obligatory. I have a fun fur blanket downstairs. I think that might just get automatically added to it. Wow. Playtime. Hello lovelies, so I have finished all of the tubes that I was making on my circular machine, and for all instructions regarding a blanket on a circular machine, I absolutely refer you to the video that's linked down below. My videography is not so good, and also the creator of that video deserves all the credit and all the YouTube clicks and watches, because this is all from them. So I'll show you roughly what I'm doing so that you've got a rough idea. If it's not something, you know, if it's just out of interest, it's not something you're looking to do yourself. But if you are looking to follow these instructions, then click on the link in the notes below and get the right version, not what I'm doing. Okay. So when the tubes were made, they have waste yarn on each end. So when we look at it from the inside, I'm joining the grey together. So what I'm doing with a crochet hook is just going into the live stitches underneath the waste yarn and clicking through, and I'm just going from side to side. So we're changing this tube into a flatter piece. So I'm picking up that stitch and just pulling it through the one on the other side. So again, other side, going into that stitch and pulling through, and you do that all the way along. So I'll do that and I'll show you when I'm getting towards the end. Right, so I have a couple of stitches left each side, so just carrying on until the end. And I started this at the side opposite the tail where I joined the grey colour. That is so I can use that to fasten off. However, if I hadn't done that, I would just put a stitch marker around. So fasten that off. You can see you have that little, almost like a garter stitch looking seam. So then it's just a function of unravelling the waste yarn, and I'm hopeful that this will be a neat and perfect edge. And I'm always hopeful, you know, may we never lose hope, whatever we're going through in life. Hope and expectation aren't always the same. Hope and actuality aren't always the same. But may we never lose hope. That's what I say. I say a lot of things, don't I? Oh, I'm getting in a tangle. That should rectify itself, hopefully. You see, I did quite a few rows of waste yarn on this. So if I now pull off the last of the waste yarn, and we can see that I've missed one. Oh, how annoying. Okay, let's rectify that. Proof of it were needed that I really can't count. But we then have this finished edge and the waste yarn to be reused another time. And you can see here on my other tube I used a stitch marker because my tail is at the other end. That is for reasons technically known in knitting circles as a mistake. And I say with a lot of things on this podcast, I make mistakes, so you don't have to. So we are now joining our tubes together. Now you could mattress stitch them. That would be a perfectly acceptable thing to do. But I'm going to crochet them together using black yarn because I ran out of grey. So I'm just going to join into that loose stitch that I had, but that could have been just, you know, it doesn't need to be a live loop. And then you just go in as if you're doing a mattress stitch. Actually, probably best if I join the edge first. So join the edge first. And I'm just doing a kind of slip stitch, double crochet UK terms, single crochet US terms. I'm just tying this in a knot to secure it for now. I will undo that knot before I weave the end in. And when I say weave the end in, these are tubes. You just hide it in the middle. It's great. So all you're doing is going up each side of the tube, 2 or 3 stitches high, and you're doing a double crochet stitch or a slip stitch, and then into the other tube, 2 stitches high, same thing again. So it's just creating a kind of loose, not loose as in not holding together, but it's not a super tight edge. You want there to be some flexibility in here. But as I said, do go and look at, just notice I've got a drop stitch here. I can sort that out afterwards. That's probably where my extra one came from. Do go and check out the original video in the notes below, because it is far better than anything I'm doing here. For a start, I don't think that user was doing it for the first time, as I am. But that's what makes it exciting, isn't it? That's what we're going to go with anyway. We know I love a gadget. And knowing that I wanted to make this blanket, and possibly more blankets, I had seen, and Aquila had led me astray. I'm not blaming you, Aquila. This is Aquila of the Lefty Knitter, who also has one of these Addi machines, and she automated hers. You can get an attachment for them, which you then attach to either a drill or an electric screwdriver to speed up, well, to make easier the process. It doesn't actually turn it much faster than I was doing by hand, which is a good thing, because I was worried that it would be going round and round and round and round, and if you then dropped a stitch or you lost control, or even just keeping a track of your rows, it would be going too fast to be able to do anything useful with. It doesn't do that, but what it does mean is instead of doing this, you're just doing this. That works for me. So I will put a link below to the Etsy shop that I got it from. They were very helpful because I contacted them and said, well, what size attachment? What attachment do I need? This is my own. This didn't come with it. And I'd had a word with my dad and said, look, Dad, I know what I need. Let me describe it to you. I don't know what it's called. And I was trying to describe the part I need. And he said, oh, this is funny. I had a conversation like this with your sister. She was having problems with her bench saw, I think it was. And I said, and there you have the difference between me and the wonderful Beverly. Her queries relate to a bench saw. Mine relate to a knitting machine. That's all you need to know about the two of us. So, a simple principle. Let me just turn the blighter on. So the attachment just sits over the handle, like so. Life becomes very easy. So that has helped a lot, because it's meant that I could do more than one panel in a day, as I was doing previously, because I didn't want to put strain on any of the joints or muscles. And excuse me, I'm still not going mad because we are still dealing with a plastic machine and I don't want to kind of wear it out by going too crazy with it, but it did make life a lot easier, and moving forward it certainly will as well. So homeless hats, just got to sit there like this, hold the button. Perfect. So so a nice handy little bit of kit, and yes, it meant I could get another gadget. Oh, I do like toys. I have just shown you putting the tubes together, and I changed my mind. I had started to crochet a couple of tubes together and I found it to be a bit slow, and it looked okay, but it wasn't really kind of what I was going for. As I say, it was a bit slow. So I decided to mattress stitch my tubes together. So I have here a finished blanket. It is enormous. It is vast. It's huge. It's extremely cold outside. It's lovely and warm. So we have this is not a Harry Styles jumper, it is a blanket. And it is enormous. I'm going to put a picture here of it laid out on the sofa. Spot the dog on the right hand side. So it is very large. I did 7 tubes. This is all on the Addi Express king size, so that has 46 needles. 7 tubes, each of 300 rows. And as you can see, it's a very scrappy project, deliberately so. It was using up a lot of small balls of yarn. So anything that I had that I'd inherited or that I'd used that was clearly left over from a project, just the small balls, kind of that size, they all went into this. I started off by using grey between each colour and at the top and bottom to kind of give it a uniformity of sorts. Obviously ran out of grey. So the 2 end panels have black, but it all kind of works. Oh, did you know? Sorry, it all kind of works. So I'm very happy with this. It is very cosy. It drapes with the knitting machines. It's kind of the equivalent of probably knitting on a 5mm needle, something of that sort of area, but with double knitting weight yarn. So you get a slightly loose fabric. But of course, because these are tubes, you've got double thickness. So it is lovely and warm, but still has a nice drape about it. So very happy with this. There it is, kind of side on. Oh, it is cold, so I'm going to stay under this, I think. Yes, very happy with it. In terms of yardage or meterage, the whole thing weighs just over 1,600 grams and 1663. It's like the beer, but one less. And I tend to estimate DK acrylic at about 3 meters to the gram. So it comes in at just under 5,000 meters, and it's something I'm very pleased with. I didn't know how it was going to turn out. And I often do this. I think, well, I'll give it a try and try an enormous version of something rather than a small. Doesn't always pay off, but this time it has. So I'm happy with this. I'm going to stick with it. Now, what I have seen, there are some Facebook groups for circular machine knitters, and some people have put up their blankets and they've planned their colours. Whereas this was knit till you run out, then put in a stripe of your in black or grey, they have planned blankets, and if you do sort of 35 rows per colour in these tubes, it comes out as blocks, so you can have a kind of patchwork checkerboard type effect. So I'm going to get my crayons out and start planning a couple of blankets. When I saw my niece earlier this month, I had a word about whether her stepdaughters would like blankets to curl up under the TV, you curl up under when they're watching TV, that kind of thing. And she felt that they would be well received. So she's given me an idea of colours. I'm going to go through the stash, see what I've got, and hopefully make the girls some blankets for Christmas. And my niece would rather have things they can use. I mean, she's happy for them to have toys and that, but she quite likes them to have things that they can use. And she said those sort of blankets they could put onto their bed as well if they were chilly. So they are definitely in the pipeline, but I have a bit of time. It's only April, we're talking Christmas, so we have some time. So that's that. And I'm now very cosy. Now I have another finished object to show you. You can tell I'm not working at the moment, can't you? Also to do with machines, and I'm going to put in a little bit of footage now to show you what I mean. Hello lovelies. Now here's a view we haven't had for a while. My flatbed knitting machine. One of my hopes for the time away from work was to attach the ribber, which I have done. So this is the main carriage and this is the ribber. And if I show you it from this angle, you can see. Now you may be surprised that I have such a desire to do lots of ribbed knitting. You would be surprised because I don't. When you've got two carriages like this, you can do circular knitting. So I have just made this little tube, and I'm now going to attempt to make some socks, or at least a sock tube. It is possible to do the ribbing, to do the short rows for the heels and all of that. I'm not going to be that ambitious. I just am hoping to make a sock tube so that I can then make some socks. Wish me luck. So as you can see, I got the ribber working on my knitting machine. This is a flatbed knitting machine. It's a Brother, begins with an 8. Now Louise, from whom I bought the machine, said to me a while ago about putting the ribber on to be able to do wider panels. And I was saying that the panels I wanted, I didn't have enough needles. She said, well, you can always put the ribber on, and they call it U knitting because you can go like a U shape. Then she was saying about making tubes, and what finally persuaded me was seeing Carrie from the Creative Obsession podcast make some socks on her flatbed knitting machine, which is, I think it's the same make, it may be the same model, I don't know. And I thought, that's a really good idea, because I'm not a massive sock knitter, because although I can see the appeal of having a tube of fine grade knitting to just keep going on, particularly portable knitting, it's not me. So that from Carrie was what really persuaded me. So I got the ribber working, which meant I could do a tube. And of course, the first time doing a tube or doing anything new on a machine, you should make life easy for yourself. So you want a good commercial yarn, something very evenly spun, very smooth, so it doesn't get caught. What you don't really want is some Noro. I wasn't thinking logically at all. Clearly, I had a look in the jars and I thought, what have I got that's... I couldn't set up my Swift at that point. I thought, what have I got that will work well here in terms of the quantity I've got? And I thought, oh, that's pretty, I'll do some Norro. I was only going to make shorty socks, so it doesn't matter that there wasn't a full skein of it. But the thing is with Norro, and this is Silk Garden sock, it's actually a little bit thicker than regular sock yarn, which means it's come up with an incredibly dense texture. Were I making socks with this, they would be, I think, very hard wearing because it is a very dense texture. But also Norro, it has knots in it and it's thick and thin. And sometimes it just goes a bit wrong. So I am going to unpick this, put it back into a skein or at least a cake, and reuse the waste yarn. But it was actually quite a good exercise. If you really want to work out how to fix problems on your machine, such as stitches not lifting off the needles properly, dealing with uneven textures, this is a way to do it. So yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so did that, happy to have done it, will now unpick it. I had a few battles getting the ribber working. It was to do with the setup. Now, there was a really good YouTube video that I watched, which was incredibly helpful, but there was one little thing that was on my machine, and I don't know if it's like a packing nut or something like that. It wasn't on the video that I watched, nor was it in the instruction manual. And in the end I thought, I wonder what happens if I unscrew this. And that's how I got it working, so yes. So after that I decided to make some socks, and I have made a pair of deliberately mismatched socks. Because I'm contrary, no. I wanted to try out a few different shapes of heel, shapes of toe, length of leg, that type of thing. So it's a 68 stitch tube. That's the beauty of doing it on the flatbed machine, that you're not stuck by the number of needles on your circular machine. So if I wanted to do tubes on my Addi, they have to be 46 stitches if I want to do tubes. That's it. You can do panels, which then have, you can vary the needle size, but the tubes have to be that number. Because I'm working on a flatbed, I can adjust the number of stitches. So I've done this as a 68 because these are for me, and I have, as we know, larger than average feet for a woman. And here we go, here are my clown socks. I must just say first of all, this yarn is from Lamington Lass. It's I think it's Super Sock Base. It'll all be in the notes below. And I hadn't realised the colourway name. I actually caked this up some time ago. I tried it in a few different things, and I love these colours, but they didn't really go with anything else I had. If I went for something which was on the mauve or the sort of lilac-y side of this, then the yellow and the green would scream out. If I went for something with something green, the yellow and the mauve would and the lilac would scream out. So none of it was really working to go with anything else. This is the perfect colourway name for this part of 2021, because this colour is called Sanitized Spring. Now I bought this, I think, at least 5 years ago, possibly even longer, but Sanitized Spring, it found its time. So as I say, both 68 stitch tubes, and I just tried a couple of different things. Now in both cases I cut the foot to the same length. They have come out a little long. When I do my next tube, I'm going to go probably just no more than half a dozen rows shorter, but these are a little long. I've worn them to see how I got on with them, and I found that to be the case. Needles. At the time I couldn't find my 2.25 needle, so I did one toe in 2.5 and one toe in 2. So this one is much tighter. Now you could argue that that's a good idea because this and the heels are the bits that wear the most, so you want them with as dense a fabric as possible. But knitting on a 2mm needle is not fun for me. So I'm very glad that I've now found my 2.25. The heels I did in the same way, kind of. So let me just work out which. So we've got two very similar heels. Now these started off as the classic afterthought heel, courtesy of Elizabeth Zimmerman. What I didn't like is the very pronounced shaping. And so with the second sock, I did the decreases the other way around. So whereas this one side's knit two together, the other side is SSK, I did them the other way around this side. Now, this sock. Now you still get the ridge, but it's a little less pronounced. Having looked at a book that I've got, a sock book, it suggests other ways of shaping the heel, including not making it basically a toe, but doing a more rounded heel, staggering the shaping around the heel. So I'm going to try a few different ways to get a feel for fit, really. The other thing that I did to make these mismatching is I have different leg lengths. As you can see, I do not match my socks at all. I was making shorty socks. Now when I've used the Rose City roller pattern, that has, I think it's 15 rows on average. It gives you, it's up to you, you're the one knitting it, but I think I've normally done 15 rows of knitting before I start the heel, but that is a different type of heel. That's a heel flap and gusset. So this one I think was about 25 rows, this was about 40 rows, and when I was wearing them I preferred the slightly longer one. Still didn't do a rib, still wanted it to be a loose, the reason why I wear hand knitted socks in the winter is because my feet have cold, nothing revolutionary there, but I'm usually wearing them before I go out later in the day, and I don't want ribs to leave marks in my ankles, so that when I'm out working and I have like tights on, you can look and say, oh, she was wearing socks earlier. So that's why I like just the loose cuff. Now the other thing that I did, when I first put this sock on, I realised that my cast off was a little tight. So I had a look around and I've used the simple stretchy bind off from Very Pink Knits, and I will link the video below. Really simple and straightforward. I'm probably far behind the majority in that. It's probably the bind off that most of you are using, but I hadn't been, and now I will. So yeah, so these are my socks. I mean, they are a little long. I could always undo the toes, unpick a few rows and then do the toes again. I could do that. Probably not going to. No. These are they. I have quite a bit of yarn left over. This took about 60 grams, I think, of the yarn. And it's a 400 meters per 100 gram sock yarn, so you know, sort of the standard quantity. And I'm happy with them. I felt so delighted to have got that machine working with the ribber attachment. I don't really use the knitting machine as much as I perhaps could, because I'm doing hand knitting and crochet and circular knitting and spinning and, you know, all the other stuff. And I feel that being able to do tubes is a really good way to use it. And I'm now thinking, oh, I could do that nice hat by Isolde that's a long tube that you put one side inside the other. And yeah, lots of things to be done. Many years ago for Christmas, himself got me some clear boots. They're clear plastic. Yeah, you wouldn't want to get too near my feet after I've been wearing them. but I wanted them at the time to wear with hand knit socks, because then the hand knit socks were sharp, and then didn't make any socks because I don't particularly enjoy knitting them. So I can now make lots of gorgeous hand knit socks with even longer legs and wear them under my clear boots so that you can see my fancy yarns. Oh, we can have a lot of fun. Oh, excuse me. So it's the equivalent of a 2.25 millimetre needle on a 75/25 sock yarn, but made on my machine. It wasn't perfect. I had left my imperfections in case they ended up being where I cut. As it happened, they weren't, but I made sure that was under the foot, so we'll live. We'll definitely live with that. And because I tend to wear these until I start putting my fancy boots on it over them, I tend to wear these just around the house, just for an hour or two. I'm not going hiking in them, so I don't heavily wear my socks, my hand knit socks. So I'm not too worried that may be a slightly weaker point, because I think my my use of them will be okay with that. I felt so happy when I got that machine working. I had said to himself, I had a list of things I wanted to do while I'm not working. I've done all but one. We're pretty good. And I had said to himself that I might want his help, because the flatbed is a long machine and it's quite heavy, so I thought, you know, it might need two of us to do it. But I managed to do it and I felt feeling pleased. And then I couldn't get the cast on to work. And I just was getting so frustrated. And I did the mature thing, which was, I'm going to walk away from this today. I'm not going to sit here getting cross and trying the same thing, exactly the same thing again, and wondering why it's still not working. And it was when I came back to it with fresh eyes that I found those little nuts that I think, like I say, might be packing nuts, but certainly, when I say packing nuts, you know, to secure things when it's being moved so that bits don't move around too much. So I've kept them, but it worked fine without, you know, it works without those two little bits. Because what it was doing is it was keeping the two beds too far apart. So I was only casting on one bed and not on the other. And you've got sort of the angles, what is it, like that, isn't it? These were too far apart. So you then had this big gap. So as you tried to cast on, it was only picking up stitches on one bed. Sorted. Very happy to be sorted. There will be more socks in my future. Many more socks, excuse me, in my future. They will all be plain knit socks, but there will be many more socks in very pretty yarns. These ones in particular. Hello lovelies. Got a few updated things that I keep meaning to let you know, and I haven't yet. So, firstly, the baby's hat was too big, so it fitted Bride of Chucky, too big for the baby. Cannot believe baby's head is smaller than Brides of Chucky's. And my niece was saying, maybe she's got a really small head. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm surprised about. It's the comparison between the two that is surprising. But it's not massively oversized. And because I had those kind of filet rows almost, I did suggest that if she wanted to, you know, to put it on the baby, perhaps thread a ribbon through and tie a little bow or something would just help it stay a bit more secure. So if not, it's a baby, the baby will grow, she will get bigger, and the hat will fit at some point, hopefully whilst it's still sunny, given that it's a brimmed hat for keeping the sun off. But we're all good. The yarn that I showed you earlier, the kind of chair full of yarn, and I was saying I was surprised it was all complete balls and skeins and hanks and all of that, not hanks but balls with bands and everything. Chatting with my big sister who had first dibs, she kept all the the smaller quantities for herself. She does, as well as the charity knitting, she does granny square blankets, and that's part of the charity work, crafting that she does. So she kept a lot of the small part balls and end of project type balls for that. So that's good, and that's that mystery solved, which is brilliant. I showed you the eyelash yarn in that stash haul and said that I would probably add it to my fluffy blanket. I actually added it to another blanket because the colours matched in better. That other blanket did have an eyelash border, as you'll see on this picture, and I just did a few rows extra until the yarn ran out. So it made that blanket a little bit bigger and gave a use to that eyelash. And I have a thank you, another thank you, and this is from Barb, who is Dragonfly Studios, and I really hope this focuses because I want you to see the spelling of dragonfly. So as you can see, it's dragon with an E, dragonfly, and Barb makes stitch markers, progress keepers, and bags, and she has very kindly sent 2 bags, one for me to keep and one to give away as a prize. And with each bag we have stitch markers. Tuck that back in there. So thank you very much, Bob, that is so kind of you. And I've unwrapped one of them. This is the one that I'm going to keep, and it is a lovely thing. It's a good size, as you can see. Drawstring. Really feels nicely made, sturdy. Just an absolute gem. And she has an Etsy shop, Bags from the Bay. I'll put the link down below. And I had a quick look at the Etsy shop. We've got bags of different shapes. So there are some triangular ones. So all sorts in there, as well as the stitch markers, progress keepers that Barb makes. So thank you so much. Now this is going to go into my prize pile. This lovely purple bag. I was sorely tempted, but I thought, no, I'm going to have the bright spotty one. Thank you very much, Barb. This will go in the prize box, and it will be part of the year-end big prize. So thank you, Barb, that is so kind. It's such a lovely fabric, really pretty. Panda and dragonfly stitch marker on there. So you'll see this again at the end of the year when it's part of the prize. And just a massive thank you, Barb, and like I say, link to the shop below. Some really lovely, beautifully made things there, so thank you so much. Now I'm sitting here feeling quite cosy. It's quite bright and sunny, but very chilly. But it's another day, another finished object. This is going to be very inelegant. Do we care? Probably not. Yay! So these are, and I will put a proper picture here, these are the Cloud Slippers by Adrienne Sullivan. And this was thanks to the lovely Jo, who goes to our knit group. She was saying she'd made this pair of slippers out of super bulky yarn, and they were very quick and easy. And I had a look because I knew that I had a ball of super bulky yarn which himself had got on his last trip to the States, which was a couple of years ago. So you can see this is Lion Brand Hometown USA. It's in the San Diego Navy colourway. And one ball of this is 81 yards. And I made the men's medium size. Now my feet are UK 10.5, which in other countries' sizes means extremely large. Basically it's an average man's size rather than a lady's size. So I knew I didn't have quite enough yarn for the large because that required, I think, 90 yards. And also it's garter stitch, so you know there's going to be a certain amount of give and stretch. So I made the men's medium, and I think I had about that much yarn left. So that was the right choice. The only other super bulky I've got a little bit of leftover, and it was used for a kind of fox coloured hood. So that with navy wouldn't be quite the look that I'm going for. And I know that you can make it by doubling or trebling or quadrupling other yarns, but this, it's 100% acrylic, and it's a nice light super bulky. So although it's thick, a lot of air in it, very lofty. So I have cosy warm feet, and that makes me happy. I'm so easily pleased. Yeah, so that is Lion Brand's Hometown USA. Wen himself went to the States last time, so it was a couple of years ago. He went to visit my nephew, who was studying, at the time he was in Mississippi, he's now in Florida. And I said to himself, I don't expect you to go looking for yarn shops. I mean, obviously if you do, extra bonus points awarded, but I don't expect it. But I pointed out some brands of stuff that, for those of you in the USA, you're going to be thinking, why do you want Lion Brand? And, you know, I've got Red Heart Super Saver and things like that. Because they're not available here, and I wanted to try them. So that's what he brought back. And I have now used this in something very welcome. And will be a regular part of my craft room wardrobe. So yes, nice pattern. It's a free pattern available on Ravelry, which I will link below. Cheers. Hello lovelies, I've got 2 more FOs to show you. I know! This is, I would guess, the last of the, I had 2 weeks off work, so I'm doing loads of crafting projects. But I have some yarn. This has been going on for quite some time. I started spinning some rolags that I got from Needle and Thread last year. Some rainbow rolags, which you can see from the photograph here. And of course, I fell in love with the colours. Because rainbows. So I spun them all into singles, and I kind of went end to end on them. So if one started at pink and finished on red, the next one I would start on red and kind of go through the spectrum that way. I was then wondering what to do with those singles, and I was toying with the idea of just plying it to itself to make a 2-ply that way. And it was suggested that that might get a bit kind of muddled and muddy, which is a fair point, although I have more on that later. And a viewer, and forgive me because my mind's gone blank as to who it was, but they very kindly suggested that I spin it with some black fibre to give a stained glass effect. Now that, I agree, would have been stunning, definitely an idea in the memory bank, but I didn't have any black fibre, and I am trying not to buy stuff. But what I did have was some lap waist that I'd got from the fabulous, the wonderful, the one and only Witchcrafty Lady. And lap waist is kind of odd bits of fibre left over. It's a bit like mill ends. I think the technical definition is slightly different. But it's beautifully luxurious because it is alpaca, silk and, oh, I've written it on the label, and merino, so it is beautifully soft. So I spun up a lot of that lap waist and then plied the two together to make this bright rainbow, don't you just want to eat it like an ice cream gorgeousness. So I am very happy with how this has turned out, and my battery's running out. Battery charged, onwards. So this is yarn that I'm extremely happy with. It's come out at a sort of light fingering weight. It's about 14 wraps per inch. 2-ply, there's 204 grams of it altogether and 624 metres. So it is relatively fine. There are some quirks, some characteristics, but I am very, very happy with this. It just feels really bright, sunny, sunshiny, day at the beach type of yarn, which I'm delighted with. Now I had slightly more of the Rolag single, the rainbow, than I had of the lap waist. So I thought, well, I'll try plying them together just out of curiosity. Rather than break into another thing of fibre, I thought I'm going to just see what it's like. So I used my plying tool so that I could and ply it. And I have got this beauty here, which like that looks like a sticker rock. I am very, very happy. So let me hold it up a little bit closer to the camera. So we have got some barber pole where the colours are not matching, and then we've also got some matching, because with and plying you're basically going from the two ends. I could have wound it onto a cake and gone from the two ends. So sometimes you're going to have colours that both plies the same colour, and sometimes you're going to have quite a strong contrast. This is slightly thinner. The Rolags came out slightly finer as a single than the lap waist. So this is nearer 16 wraps per inch, and I've got 146 metres, 33 grams. So although it is a little thinner, I'm still thinking of using them together. And one of the thoughts I had was a shawl, a bit like something like the Ritual shawl by Mars Hay Brownberry, which has a kind of fairly plain body with a few stripes, but then a lace border. Don't know that I have enough of this, but that's kind of where my mind's going at the moment. So I may even use this for some stripes in it and then do the lace border in this. But either way, I am very happy with these. They feel really nice as well. You can imagine this one with, you know, alpaca, silk and merino. That's not going to itch, is it? So, and nor does this. I don't know what the fibre is on this, apart from pretty, but it has a nice feel to it as well. So it will be quite comfortable for neckwear if that's what I go with. Yes, so some yarns, which is very exciting for me. And I also have another large project. People who've been around a while will remember that sadly a lovely friend died a couple of years ago, and her husband very kindly gave me her yarn stash. There was a particular type of yarn there. She had 2 colours of it, and then the doorbell rang. It's one of those days. Thought I might as well make myself a cup of tea as I was downstairs. So, where was I? Yarn, yes. So I was given 2 colours of Debbie Bliss Milano, which is quite an unusual yarn. It's a sort of boucle texture. It has like a thread wrapped around, almost looks like a felted yarn that it's wrapped around. It's unusual. It's 40% wool, 28% polyamide, 18% silk, 8% polyester and 6% acrylic. So it's a bit of a mongrel, nothing wrong with that. And I'd seen, must have been on Ravelry, some people had made a sort of Chanel style jacket. And I think that was one of the patterns originally designed for the yarn. And so I got into my head that's what I wanted to do as well. I thought I would knit it. Well, 2 things. Firstly, I knew I wouldn't have quite enough yarn, so I managed to get some more. It's the same colour as one of the colours I've got, because I thought I was going to have a 3 colour block effect. It is the same colour as one of the ones I have. It's a discontinued yarn, so I had to kind of get what I could. Because it's the same colour but not the same dye lot, I've separated them in the garment. I started off thinking about knitting something, and what I thought I would do is one of my favourite stitches, which is this. That's the right side. There's the wrong side. 1 row knit, 1 row knit, 1 purl one. It's a good fabric. It holds its shape. It doesn't curl. I find it a very useful one I don't mind purling. So it's a little bit floppy, but I thought I would give it a go. I started to make a pattern which was kind of okay, but in the end I was having to rework the sleeves. I didn't like the way the sleeves were going, and it just was all just feeling a bit, you know, when you're working on something and you keep going but you're thinking, actually I'm not happy with this, but you keep going, and it reaches the point when you think, no. So I'd got down as far as separating for the sleeves and I'd started working the sleeves, but just wasn't quite right. So I thought maybe I should crochet, because that would give me a firmer fabric. So I found a pattern on the Yarnspirations site, which I will put a photo in here and also put the link below. Managed to get gauge using a 5mm hook, and I used that as the basis. Now, one thing I found quite interesting was I was searching for crochet garments with a set-in sleeve, and this came up under that listing and is listed as having a set-in sleeve. Now, I would call this a modified drop sleeve, because a set-in sleeve to me would be the sort that's kind of shaped almost like a bell shape at the top of the sleeve. This is straight and it just slots into a sort of straight gap. So yes, I personally wouldn't say that was a set-in sleeve. I would call it a modified drop, but it still works, so we're all okay. So here is, let me do a couple of buttons up, my cardigan, which I am rather pleased with. I think it's quite smart. So the stitch is single crochet US term, double crochet UK all the way through. It's a free pattern, so I'm not giving away any secrets. And here it is. So I've got that sort of Chanel type collar. It's actually quite a wide and deep neck. I could always try and put more rows in to make it a little bit higher. I'm going to see how it goes for wearing. Tapered sleeve, and you can see I've got this colour block, and then the second colour at the bottom, and I've also added some pockets. So I will put in some photograph me going like this, not always helpful. So I'll put in a photograph or two here of me wearing it so you can see what it's like in its entirety. And let me tell you about it. So it's the Adult Crochet Crew Neck Cardigan by Yarnspirations, which is from Caron. It was originally designed for Simply Soft. I used the Debbie Bliss Milano. I used in total 2,233 meters. Modifications. Of course there are modifications. I know last month there weren't, but this month there is. There are. Sorry. So I didn't put on any cuffs or welts. As I was working in double crochet, it was holding its shape quite nicely. The only thing is that does sometimes curl up a little on the corners, but again, I'm seeing how that goes. I made it longer than the original pattern. It was another one of these where I basically used the pattern for the numbers. So I made it longer. I added the pockets, and all I did here, it really was an afterthought, these little patch pockets. So I started off with a few stitches, increased a few, then worked up, and just put a little crab stitch end on the last row. Also at the bottom I did crab stitch as well. You've got that sort of picoey edge. I didn't do that around the neck because I didn't know if I would find that a bit irritating to have that kind of slightly knobbly texture across the back of my neck, so I haven't done it there. I do have a bit of yarn left over, so I can do that. The yarn that's left over is the bottom colour, not the top colour. So I will probably make sure I've washed this a few times before I do add anything, so I can see if these colours look dramatically different. At the moment it's all looking fairly similar, but I'm going to sort of suck it and see a bit on this one to see how it works. It's quite heavy, very much an outdoor or a sort of blazer type wear, I think. It's not a curl up in an armchair cosy cardigan, but I feel that it is quite smart. I think it would be smart enough to wear when I'm visiting people, so that is good. And the last thing is I bought buttons. I do have lots of buttons that I've inherited from various sources over the years, but I needed 7 or 8 for this, and I didn't have enough of the right size, so I bought these from Textile Garden, who are a company probably about 30 miles away from me. I had never bought from them online before. I've seen them at shows, so at yarn shows and festivals and that sort of thing, and they always seem to have a really good selection and reasonable prices as well, but not to the point of they're so cheap you think someone's not getting paid for making these. You know, they feel like good value for good quality. So these are coconut shell with some gold coloured detailing, and I just thought they finished it off nicely. So that is that. A large FO. Because I have been so productive, I'm back on par yarn in, yarn used for the year, which I didn't think I would be after last month's extravaganza of gift. Yeah, so back on par, which is rather staggering. Haven't counted my hand spun yet though, that might push it the other way. We shall see. Thank you, lovelies. That's that for now. And now the door. It's all interruptions today. Hello, lovelies. We're at month end. I've had my hair cut. It's very short. That's fine with me. And I have another thank you to share. The lovely Lisa got in touch with me and said, I hope this doesn't sound too weird, but I saw something and thought of you, and can I send it to you? So, intrigued. And this parcel arrived and I was absolutely blown away. Thank you again, Lisa. I mean, it's just amazing. It started off, she had been to a craft fair and seen some hand spun yarn in red and black. Red and black are the colours of the costumes of the drumming group to which I belong. Now, you haven't heard much about it because we've not been drumming during the pandemic. We can't get together to practice, and none of the events that we would normally perform at are going on. But drumming is still in our hearts. None of us have done any practice, but it's still in our hearts. And red and black are our colours. And she saw this yarn and then made me these fabulous mittens. So it's not just that Lisa found this yarn and thought of me, which is kindness itself, but then these gorgeous cabled mittens, which are going to be so welcome. Because some of our events during bonfire season, we're talking kind of November and out in the cold, and these are just beautiful. So thank you. Really love them. And she had a little bit of yarn left over, so she sent that in the bundle. But that wasn't all. Just unbelievable. Lovely card. There was a stitch marker. There was some chocolate. Some of that I've still got. It's very nice chocolate. And this gorgeous fibre as well, which is from Port Fibre. again, a business that Lisa was keen to support, and just a beautiful tonal purple colour. So I shall have a lot of fun spinning that. It is 85% Polworth, 15% silk, hand dyed, 4.9 ounces of it. How gorgeous, just absolutely lovely. So thank you again. I have no words. Thank you. Oh, there was a hot pad, a pom-pom hot pad. I mean, there was just this bundle of things. It was like having a little Christmas opening all that up. So much appreciated. Truly am grateful. Thank you, Lisa. I have had a productive month. Now, the first 2 weeks of since I recorded the last podcast, I wasn't working. I decided to take a bit of a break from work. It had been very busy. I conduct funerals. It had been very, very full on, and I just needed a couple of weeks to kind of clear my head, which it did the trick. I really felt better for that time off. And it means I had the opportunity to do a lot of crafting. Can't really go anywhere else, so did a lot of crafting. So if you're watching this for the first time and you think, gosh, she makes a lot of stuff, this is unusual. This is unusually productive. It's not normally like this. I mean, it's this daft and this much from me, but not normally this many finished objects and that sort of thing. So unusually productive, but it's nice to have time to kind of get things done. Since I've been back to work, it has been much quieter than it was, and so I've decided to start on the blankets for my niece's stepdaughters. I mentioned earlier that I was going to make them for Christmas. So I have a collection of tubes, not yet assembled, as you can see. So yes, they're going to have a blanket each, and hopefully they will like these colours. What I have decided to do is, for each tube I make, and I'm making 5 for each blanket, I am also making a hat whilst the circular machine is all set up. When I'm making long pieces like that, my craft table is an old dining table, and it has a lift out panel which makes it extendable, and I have that taken out altogether so that there's a hole for the stuff to drop through, the work to drop through. So while that's all set up, I thought I would do some hats. Not that these require that length, but as it's all in situ. So I have some homeless hats, including one where I tried a technique that all the cool cats of circular machine knitting know, but I didn't. And it has this lovely mock cable, and it's very simple to achieve, because all you do, these hats, they're just a long tube, and then you gather up each end. You just cinch them together, fold one inside the other, and you're done. For this technique, before you cinch them, just don't include a couple of the stitches, let them run down as drop stitches, and then with a crochet hook just chain them up together, so you get this lovely mock cable effect. So I'm rather taken with that. I think that's very attractive, and I will be doing something similar or exactly the same in the future. So yeah, I should have 10 hats and 10 tubes, making 2 blankets. When I've put them together, I'm just going to put them aside for Christmas. I've got some vacuum bags, I'll probably store them safely in there, and the hats I'll store until the winter. There's a local homeless charity that I like to give things to, so I'll wait until autumn probably and then offer those and see if they're taking stuff. So that's that. So again, it's looking like I'm being really productive. I am absolutely ploughing through all that yarn I was given, because these are largely made from that yarn, as well as some other stuff I had in the stash. But this is unusually creative for me. So we've come to the end of another month. This is a long podcast. I hope that's not a problem for anyone. I normally try to keep hour just about, and I know we're over this month, but had a lot to show. So just a reminder, thank you again for everyone watching. Thank you to everyone who's taking part in the make along. Quick reminder on that, it's accessories for the person. So no garments, no home accessories. It's accessories you can wear about your body. So just be aware of that. There are a few things kind of in there that I think I'm not sure that's really an accessory, but hopefully it's a broad enough scope that a lot of people can take part if you'd like to. There are some beautiful projects in the threads. So if you're able to and you've got a little time to spend, some really lovely things in there. So well worth a look. Thank you to everyone who's been taking part. And we're on to May almost. Gosh. Still a lot of restrictions for COVID in the UK. May is normally a huge weekend for our drumming group. Most people don't sober up for about 4 days. And there's a big event in my local town called Jack in the Green. It's a big parade. We're normally part of that. The day before we have a drum off with another drum group. There are lots of drum groups around this area. And yeah, it's a real shame that these things aren't happening, but we've got to stay safe. We can't have crowds of people gathering together. And although they're outside activities, you've still got a lot of people in confined spaces. Confined because this happens in the old town of Hastings, and these are narrow streets. These are old medieval sometimes streets. Certainly the layouts are medieval. So they are narrow, and you get a lot of people. It's not possible to stay 2 feet apart, let alone 2 meters. So it is sensible that these things aren't happening, but it is a shame. We are missing them. But soon, hopefully. There's an event in July called Pirate Day. Why are we dressed as pirates? Because we are. Sorry. And we hope to take part in that. So fingers crossed that will happen, and then events throughout the year will then take place as they might normally do. That's the hope and the plan, providing things stay as we need them to, that numbers continue going in the right direction, enough people taking up the vaccinations, no problems with new variants coming in, lots of variables in all of this. But if things stay as we hope and plan, then with a bit of luck, we'll be back to drumming and outdoor events and those sorts of things. But not just yet. So May will be another sort of quiet month, I think. And just more of the same. Crafting, working, sitting in the garden if the weather allows, out with the dog, the usual. And I am very lucky that I'm able to do things I enjoy, and I consider myself very fortunate. I hope you're all keeping well. Thank you for all the comments. Do let me know how you're doing. I love to hear from you all, as you know, and it really means a lot that you kind of engage and that you're part of this community, and it means a huge amount that you even watch this stuff. So thank you. You're all lovely people. So have a good month, take care. The weekly vlog is still happening, so that goes up every Friday, usually about 10 minutes or so, just sort of what I've been doing in the week. If there are any finished objects, I will do a quick, this is what I've made, but the details are always in this longer podcast at month end. Take care, keep well, keep safe, look after yourselves, enjoy your crafting, and thank you for being here. Cheers. Bye bye.